Wormon! Come back from space already. There's a new Kamen Rider on Amazon Prime. Did you evolve into a Kamen Rider thing? Is that bogus? I'm sorry. Dick? So yeah, there's a Kamen Rider on Amazon Prime, which is actually kind of weird that they have it. But they have it! And it's like a remake of Kamen Rider Black, which is, I think, the Kamen Rider that, like, comes right before the Kamen Rider that was adapted by Saban Entertainment. It was my first exposure to Kamen Rider, because I watched Power Rangers, and they did a crossover. And it was dumb, kind of like everything Power Rangers. But I always had, like, a deep-rooted love for Kamen Rider, and kept trying to revisit it over the years. I watched Kamen Rider Gaim the whole way through. That took 8 years to do or something. I had to keep getting back to it. It's hard to find it anywhere, because nobody releases this shit. And then I started Decade. I want to get to Kamen Rider Black, and then I think it's called like Black 2 or something, Black RX, where it has the green Kamen Rider, who became Masked Rider in America. We also had Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, which was like some of the worst acting I've ever seen in an American like fantasy show, period. House of the Dead 2 has like better line delivery at times. But yeah, this is a remake of Kamen Rider Black. And I didn't see that, so there's a lot of things that I might not have realized and missed and made for some cool surprises, actually. That was the thought I had. Now, Black Sun kind of feels like more cinematic, sort of. It's shot like widescreen, I guess. And it tries to be like more dramatic and serious, but it's weird because it still feels like Kamen Rider. Like, the monsters, they're people. They're called Kaijin, you racist. They still look kind of cheesy. It's like people wearing bird masks and grasshopper masks and crickets, and all kinds of like sea creatures and stuff. I mean, Kamen Rider in general has, like, I think darker stories than, like, Sentai and Power Rangers and Ultraman. But it's just funny because, like, it's juxtaposed with all these weird suits that, like, the villains and other non-Kamen Rider people have. And it was definitely, like, more organic and basic with fights. There aren't big flashy weapons and lasers and things nearly to the extent of other Kamen Rider shows. Like, the most we get is Kamen Rider Black Sun using like a kind of powered up move where he just gets like a super kick and a super punch with like red auras. He just kind of pulls it out of nowhere and it's a cool surprise. And then his twin not brother Kamen Rider Shadow Moon uses telekinesis. I'll never pronounce that word right. Also, it's fucking gory. Like, very. These guys rip into things and rip people apart and use their claws and their teeth because they are like grasshopper locust things, so they bite like them. Like, heads get ripped off, people get like ripped in half. It's definitely a lot worse than normal. I mean, Kamen Rider Gaim already got dark and people died in it, but you're like seeing heads and upper halves of bodies and limbs and things being flung around. Lots of blood. And oh yeah, being turned into a Kaijin is fucking gross. You get cut open and they shove a thing in your tum-tum, and then you just start screaming a lot and you can turn into a man with a bird mask. Also, it's like whenever they do cut people open to turn them into Kaijin, it's just like red gore. It doesn't look like what a person would look like when they're cut open, which is probably on purpose because they wanted to look gory while still like not being too realistic and off-putting, I guess. I don't know, but it's an interesting process becoming a Kaijin. And like the story's pretty simple because they only have 10 episodes. I don't even remember it. The Kaijin are like weapons and also sold for profit and stuff because people want anthropomorphic animals. That's unrealistic. And they want to like sell them, use them for weapons. I mean, the original prime minister behind the project wanted like an army of them. And then his grandson is prime minister. And just, he's the one that's kind of like just selling them off. Using them to get the vote. There's like 200,000 of them in Japan or something, and he wants them to side with him and vote for him for, like, political power. While he sells them secretly. That's not actually well planned at all. And he controls them by keeping their weird giant grasshopper man extract provider called the Creation King imprisoned. He excretes something that can be, like, mixed with human meat and made into something called heaven that they can eat to basically stay alive forever. As long as they keep eating it. I mean, they'll still live without it. They don't need it. But keeping the Creation King kept them in check. And also, there's a lot of racism and stuff. People hate the Kaijin and want them gone, and they don't even know how they were made. Everybody is kind of in the dark as to how they were born. Like, they don't know about the origin of them being created as weapons and whatnot. But yeah, it's a very short show. It's only 10 episodes. So things kind of, I don't know, it feels very flighty. Like I'm still kind of shocked it's over and I'm done with it. Maybe because I took 8 fucking years watching Kamen Rider Gaim. And then I started Decade like a year ago and still haven't really gotten that far. Because yeah, like not much was really done to establish that the party behind the Kaijin Control League wanted them as a army. But then again, that was kind of just like the Prime Minister, Grandpa Man, that first started it all that was doing that. And the grandson, not Grandpa Man, Prime Minister of present times, is the one that's just kind of selling them off and using them to get their vote just to keep him in power. So, I mean, I guess if they did build an army with them, how the fuck would anybody be able to, like, overcome that? Because, like I said before, the Kamen Riders in this don't have, like, massive laser weapons. They just fight with their teeth and their claws and just fucking brutality. Like, the Creation King gets killed at one point by Black Sun, and he rips his heart out, and he gets his own, like, leg cut off comically when the Creation King, like, just brings his hand down on his leg, because he's a giant grasshopper man puppet, so he can't be animated that much while they're fighting, and his heart gets, like, ripped out and just sitting there, and it's still, like, alive and stuff. The show's gory, and for, I think, like, the first 5 episodes or something, Black Sun and Shadow Moon, I think I mentioned his name. They're both the main, like, Kamen Riders in this, with Black Sun being the main one, and Shadow Moon being kind of antagonist guy / deuteragonist. He kind of decides later on that he's going to take over and Kaijin are going to just subjugate humans because he's tired of all the racism. There's a lot of death in this, I should say. It's a pretty brutal show. But yeah, as Kaijin, because Kaijin get a human form and then their weird animal rubber suit forms. And Black Sun and Shadow Moon, like their forms are these kind of decked out fucking grasshoppers that look kind of demonic and naked. Most Kaijin keep their clothes on with some weird mask and gloves and things, but they get like full body suits and they suspiciously have these belt buckles on. And I think a good half of the series they're just using those forms and it's implied they're really strong. And then when Aoi, the girl protagonist that befriends Black Sun, she gets kidnapped and turned into a Kaijin for reasons. Black Sun gets mad and then he does like a pose. He's like, and you hear like leather stretching and you're like, what the fuck's he doing? He's not transforming into his grasshopper form. And then he says the line, well, the word. And then all of a sudden you get like his belt thing, which you'd seen kind of just sitting there before, starts like activating. Well, it appears on his waist and starts activating and stuff. And then he transforms into a demonic looking Kamen Rider and not just a demonic looking grasshopper. And it's the coolest fucking thing. Because my dumbass thought the whole time that that was their Kamen Rider forms. And I didn't really know much going into this series. So to see him actually become like a Kamen Rider, it was awesome. Like the helmet looks kind of a lot like Kamen Rider Black's helmet. And the rest of the body looks more like Kamen Rider Black, but still like meaty and grasshoppery. And he rips off one of these like leg things because he's got a leg on each chest shoulder area that wraps around. He rips one of them off and turns it into a sword. And well, after that it's gone. Like it never regrows because I mean he kind of injured himself to make this sword. He doesn't keep it with him. He just uses it to cut one of the main villain dude's arm off. Yeah, and then it's never seen again. And then Shadow Moon does something similar in his grasshopper form to make a sword. And then that's gone permanently, and then that leaves each of them with one leg later on during their fight. But yeah, the story is pretty good. It's about a bunch of people who wanted to unite to save the world from, like, racism against Kaijin, and some of them go along with the Prime Minister after he says, hey, I'll recognize Kaijin, but you gotta let me keep the Creation King, and then you work for me. And then that causes a conflict, because that splits the group up, and you get Shadow Moon going off and becoming a hobo, living in a bus. And, no, that's Black Sun that does that. I got their names mixed up. Shadow Moon gets kidnapped for 50 years, and they just keep him alive, feeding him heaven. He's just chained to a wall for 50 fucking years. Like, alright, good existence. Oh, and Aoi, actually, like I mentioned, she becomes, like, a Kaijin, and it's a mantis, grasshopper-looking Kaijin. And then later on, she also gets a Kamen Rider transformation, but the only difference is, like, she gets a belt buckle in her Kaijin form. Because I was, like, shitting myself when she did the transformation pose, but then she didn't do anything. And Shadow Moon, the first time he transforms into his Kamen Rider form, he's killing a racist after they murder, like, Aoi's Kaijin friend. They survive this horrible ordeal of trying to raid the Prime Minister and Kaijin friend's compound building. And they split up and leave, and this poor kid gets, like, killed. So then Shadow Moon's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm done with this racist shit. I'm popping this fucker's head. And when he does, that's, like, when he transforms. Because, yeah, there was, like, a group of racists that kept running around spewing anti-Kaijin rhetoric and stuff. And just to see, like, the leader get his head just fucking destroyed by the evil Kamen Rider, it was awesome. This is a very structured review. What the fuck? Am I even... And there's some things that are unexplained. There are stones called the King Stones that Black Sun and Shadow Moon each have. It's not really clear. I guess it's... When you become a Kaijin, you get, like, a stone inserted into your tum-tum, and it comes from, like, extract from the Creation King. I don't know how the first Kaijin was made. Well, that was, like, the Creation King. But I don't know what they inserted into him. But anyway, Shadow Moon and Black Sun, for some reason, have their stones separate from them, even though they did get experimented on. But they were more supposed to be cyborgs. It's why they get to transform, I guess. It's not very clear. They're the only Kaijin with these belt things, except for Aoi. She gets a belt thing. Somehow. I think it's implied Black Sun transferred it to her during, like, a touching moment when they're holding hands and stuff. Oh well. But yeah, they have their stones separate, and never really explained what makes them different. I guess because theirs were kept separate somehow, and you need them to become the Creation King. Like, you kill him and have both stones, and you become the next one if you're strong enough. It's weird. And then, like, Black Sun, when he was out being a hobo in a bus, it's implied, like, he hadn't transformed into his grasshopper form in a long time, and obviously neither had his not brother, who was stuck in prison for 50 years. But then he finds Aoi after he, like, took on some random assassination contract to kill her and couldn't bring himself to do it. And he finds her necklace, touches it, and it, like, triggers his arm to start transforming. And then Shadow Moon over in prison transforms, and it breaks his shackles off, and it's like, oh, now they can transform again? Why couldn't they before? I guess because they hadn't seen the stones in a while? You didn't make it! Because, yeah, I mean, if they could transform the whole time, I don't think Shadow Moon would have stayed in prison for 50 years. Half naked. Every time somebody gets put in this prison, they take their shirt off, and I don't get it. That's another thing. That's going on the list of unexplained things. Why they be putting people in prison half naked? And then there's, like, a moment when Black Sun tries to, like, fight Shadow Moon. Because I mentioned his leg got cut off by the Creation King during, like, a big gory encounter. And then he's in his wheelchair, and Shadow Moon shows up to try and get, like, both King Stones from him. Because I guess you don't have to hold on to your King Stone in order to transform. But, well, I don't fucking know how this works. Black Sun just has both of them, and he's sitting in his wheelchair. Shadow Moon transforms, and then Black Sun tries to transform in his wheelchair. And he's like, I'm not letting you do that. And he starts beating the fuck out of him. He eventually does get to transform, but then he gets, like, stomped to death. and they kind of take him away to like a base, and then they're pouring like whale piss on him, and it seems to be healing him. And they even take like his stump and sort of reattach the leg to it, because they've been carting that around, and they pour whale piss on that, and that seems to kind of heal him, but he's unresponsive and comatose and stuff. It's the same fucking thing. It's kind of appropriate because the guy helping him is a whale kaijin, so it had to be whale piss. He's pouring it out of some like shell, and then it doesn't seem to be waking him up until Aoi shows up and does it, and then he magically heals, and then he eats heaven to kind of recuperate. But then this limp he's had the whole series doesn't heal or go away. I mean, sure, the fucking leg that was hurt got cut off, but they super healed him. But it's fine, because whenever he's transformed into Grasshopper or Kamen Rider, it doesn't matter. He can walk okay and does a lot of, like, scurrying around on all fours. It's actually kind of cool. But yeah, it's a fun little short series. It's got a pretty simplistic story. It's about, like, equality and not being racist jerks. Yep. And the fights are, like, pretty cool and pretty, like, down to earth compared to, like, later Kamen Rider shows. The story's pretty short, obviously. I think I said that. There's only 10 episodes, so they never really get too grand. Like, the whole planet doesn't end up dying, like in Kamen Rider Gaim. And there's not, like, other dimensional stuff, like in Decade. So the world's not really ending. It's actually all pretty localized to Japan. Although I guess by the end they're implying that there's going to be a war against humans that are racists or something. And the cabinet, the whole prime minister cabinet, whatever, is still corrupt when a new prime minister takes over. Because there's still, like, remnants of the evil people. Yeah, it's a good show. I want to watch Kamen Rider Black now. I'm gonna do that. I recommend this one. It's pretty basic, short, down to earth. It's cool seeing a gritty, gross Kamen Rider ripping people up. Which I guess that's also what Kamen Rider Amazon's like, so I should try that too. That dude, like, physically transforms into Kamen Rider. Like, no energy stuff. It's, like, more like Guyver. He just mutates into him. But whatever, this is Kamen Rider Black Sun we're talking about. And I give it 4 grasshoppers out of 5. Okay.